Gourmet Warriors. At least sometimes. This is a Japanese Super Famicom beat-em-up I've actually had a lot of interest in. I've wanted to play this game for a really long time, but unfortunately, Super Famicom copies of this game cost an absolute fortune. Fortunately, Sly Boots hooked me up with a copy, which means I finally get to experience this game, which I've wanted to for a very, very long time. And it's super exciting for me. But before we even get into the game, you'll notice two big things. First and foremost, the name of the game doesn't match the name of the game. Like, the Steam page has a completely different game name than the actual game menu. And I don't know how you would make this oversight. Like, did you not know what the game you were putting out was called? I don't know. The second thing you'll notice, as you're trying to come to grips with whatever this game is now called, is that, none of the controls work. Bearing in mind, and I cannot stress this enough, this is a Super Nintendo console emulation that doesn't have controller support out of the box. Yeah. It was at this point I thought about just firing up an emulator, well, a better optimized emulator anyway, and just playing this on my Steam Deck through EmuDeck. But fortunately, because I'm a bro, I know how to fix this, and I'm gonna pass that knowledge on to you. You take out a keyboard, and you press Escape, which accesses a magical emulator menu that allows you to enable gamepad support. I don't know why this is something we have to do. No, there's no manual anywhere that explains any of this. You're just expected to enable your own gamepad support. It's baffling too, because the store page says it has partial gamepad support. Out of the box, it has zero gamepad support, and you're expected to turn it on yourself when the people who put this emulator package out could have probably just clicked one box and it would have solved all of life's problems. But instead, no, we have to troubleshoot it ourselves. Based on its default configuration, I think you very easily could assume that this game is just entirely non-functional out of the box and skip over it, which is a shame because the game itself is really good. It's just, why is it set up this way? Okay, well, my feelings on that aside, Gourmet Warriors, assuming that's what we're indeed calling this, is a really fun but very, very standard comedic beat-em-up game. Now, the story takes place in the far-flung year of 2000 and something. Evil villains are descending upon the city and fight about it. No, I'm serious, that's basically the plot of the game. To be fair, it's a beat-em-up, it doesn't have much of a plot to begin with, and it's never referenced ever again. But that's what you get, 3 screens that basically just say, hey, there's evil here, do something about it. The story is definitely lacking, but this is a game that I think its storytelling and comedy are primarily told through the visuals of the game itself. That said, that's not really an excuse for the story to not be all that great, but that's how it is. From here on, you can select one of 3 French-named characters that exist on a spectrum of more health to more speed. On one side, you have Bonjour, who is equipped with more health. I think he has something like 40% more health than the average, but he's the slowest out of all of them. On the far right side of the screen, you have Très Bien, who is the fastest out of the bunch and is the proud owner of the most bizarre running animation I've ever seen. Seriously, this alone is a reason to play this game. It's amazing. And right down the middle, you have Mademoiselle, who is an angry butterfly lady, and therefore she's my favorite. But despite the fact that the characters do exist kind of on a spectrum of stats, having gone back and played the first level as the other 2 characters a little bit, the difference is pretty negligible. Just pick the character you think looks the best and is the most fun, really, and you'll probably do just fine. Now, the gameplay itself is a fairly straightforward beat-em-up. How straightforward is it? It uses basically 2 buttons. Like, you can go through on the menu and actually modify your control scheme, and really only 2 buttons are used. You've got one button that's used for punching, and in certain contexts we'll be using multiple special abilities. You won't see too many of those here because I had a lot of trouble pulling them off. because they are kinda weird. They seem to be activated in between context of various amounts of combos, stun animations, and grabs, and I couldn't activate them terribly reliably. Fortunately, I got an AI helper that seemed to be able to do it a little bit better, so you will see a little bit of that. But just bear in mind, the special abilities in this game are kind of a little bit weird. Otherwise, you have a jump and that's basically it. Well, I say that, but you do have a button that's dedicated to posing, and interestingly enough, you can pose in any directional combination with the D-pad to get a different pose, which is a lot of work for something that does absolutely nothing. The L and R buttons are also set up for Command 1 and Command 2, but near as I can tell, that is nothing. I couldn't actually get them to do anything, so I have no idea what that's on about. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward game. You see enemies, you punch them a whole bunch, eventually they'll get stunned, which will let you grab them and do special abilities, maybe sometimes. Interestingly enough, when enemies die, they drop items, and these items aren't directly power-ups. In fact, there's only one actual power-up in the game, dropped by a specific enemy with a light bulb on his head that allows you to create a shadow clone of yourself that'll do all the fun special abilities for you, because I certainly can't. That said, this AI companion is a little questionable. Frequently, they'll just stop and start posing for no reason, seemingly because they don't want to get in the way of your own combos or something, and sometimes they'll just attack you out of nowhere because you got too close to an enemy. The AI for your teammate is definitely questionable, but it's nice to have a secondary character to take some of the heat off you every now and then. But that's about the extent of the power-ups in this game. There's nothing else to help you on your quest. There's no other pickups that'll like heal you or anything. It's really just the shadow clone ability and the random drops enemies have, which aren't even used in the main beat 'em up portion of the game. When you get to the end of the stage, you'll be encountering a boss, but they are very, very bizarre, and not in the sense that everything in this game is kind of off-kilter and weird in that sort of Cho-Aniki kind of way, but more just all over the map in terms of where they sit on a difficulty curve. Like, the first boss is easy enough, but then the, I believe, second boss, Star Platinum, is like the hardest boss in the game. I swear, he's using Zawardo because he is absolutely cheating. He can break out of stuns, break out of grabs, break out of combos, be invulnerable whenever he wants and turn to a giant wall of damage, as well as heal himself. It took me about an hour and a half to beat this game, and it's not an exaggeration to say about half that time was just this one boss. Fortunately, at the very least, you have unlimited continues, and I got to test out the difficulty modifier to see if that would help. Side note, the difficulty modifier in this game only seems to affect the number of regular enemies, and regular enemies are cake in this game, so adding more really doesn't make the game harder, but it doesn't affect bosses, seemingly. But then, like, the next boss after this, or a couple bosses down the line, is a two-stage boss fight that I just slide kicked into the corner and it did nothing. And the final boss, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but honestly, I was shocked it didn't have like 8 more forms because I defeated it without ever taking damage. Yeah, the boss difficulty in this is all over the place and in a very unpredictable way. On the bright side, however, this does mean that it does feed into the comedic values of defying expectations to give you a laugh. And that's pretty cool. The regular enemies are all over the place and very, very silly. You've got giant moai heads that are controlled by little stick figures that if you don't kill them, which you can only do by running them over, they'll just start dancing the hopak for some reason. Or you'll fight bunny girls, or you'll fight weird serve bots before they were in Mega Man Legends for some reason. The enemies in this game are all over the place and they are delightful, although I wish there was more of them because there really aren't that many. Now once you defeat the boss, now you get to where the game's ambiguous title actually starts to play into the gameplay. All those random items you were picking up, those are ingredients for cooking. And you can select 2 at a time to create a meal for yourself to give yourself a boost for the next stage, such as throwing meat and potatoes together to create a nicely grilled steak, or in my case, ice cream and meat to make ice cream on meat. Seriously, this game does not understand the majesty and brilliance of my invention, the grilled steak flavored ice cream. It will be the biggest financial success known to man. But until it is, please support the Patreon so that I can eat something that isn't this horribly disgusting meat flavored ice cream. I mean, it's great, you should buy it. Yum. I love it. It's great. Seriously though, I kind of like this idea of mixing ingredients to create gourmet meals for your characters, but it seems to only give you health bonuses. And while that's fairly limiting by design, the game also doesn't explain any of it. It just says pick 2 things and then maybe you'll get a health boost or a health reduction or something depending on your combination. And it feels like this is designed entirely to force you to experiment, combine weird things to see what you get and see what kind of boosts you get. But because you can only do this at the end of a stage as opposed to sort of in mid-stage breaks or something, and because it's only health stuff, you don't really get the ability to experiment and mix and match this stuff because you know that you have 1 shot per stage to create one of these things, so you better make it good and you better just go with what you know so that you're definitely getting some effective boost. And because it's all health, you don't really get much else in terms of variation for what you're even doing this for. Like, why can't I add peppers and get some kind of like fiery breath punch or something that makes my attacks do like a burning effect? I mean, there's already a burning effect in the game anyway. I feel like this could be expanded so much more to give you all sorts of crazy effects and buffs or potentially debuffs if you want a good laugh or something, but it's just sort of there and it's not terribly well utilized. And it's a shame because it's pretty much the only thing this game has that makes it a terribly unique game by design. Otherwise, it's just sort of a fairly standard, if kind of all over the place, goofy beat 'em up. And it's not a bad thing, but it doesn't really have any mechanical hook to it beyond this, and it's just a shame that it's so underwhelming. The overall presentation to Gourmet Warriors is definitely the high point, I think. The sprites are absolutely beautiful, the individual characters are very silly and goofy, and like I said, there's an individual pose for every single directional input you can have on the controller. There's no reason for this, it's a completely useless skill, but it's there, and it's silly, and it kind of makes your character look like they're dancing, and that's cute. The stages are absolutely gorgeous, which helps distract from how kind of bland they are as like an actual environment to move around in. At the very least, they look quite lovely and memorable, and the enemies, while there aren't a ton of them, they're very cute and fun. I love the little stick figures that sit around doing the hopack if you leave them alone long enough, and they're so small you can't even hit them, you just have to squish them by walking over them. It's a cute touch. Visually, this game is great. Audio-wise, it's decent enough. Honestly, I don't think any of the music is remotely memorable, but it worked as needed. Overall, the presentation to Gourmet Warriors is very, very enjoyable. Now, if you want a copy of Gourmet Warriors on Steam, it is available for $17. And honestly, I'm not sure I can recommend it at that price. While the game itself is a decent enough, if fairly standard beat 'em up, that is a lot of money for what is effectively a ROM slapped into an emulator that you have to do the legwork to actually make functional at the start. It comes across as incredibly sloppy that this was the state it was released in, and it seems like a relatively simple fix to solve the problem that just never was applied. And it comes across as just like the people who put this out in this state didn't care. And again, it just comes across as sloppy. But I have to give a huge shout out and thank you to Sly Boots for hooking me up with a copy because I've wanted to play this forever. And while you can still get this on the Super Famicom, I can see it right now, it is going on for sale for $300, which still makes this the most affordable way to get a hold of this. Well, legally anyway, although other means might mean it runs slightly easier and you don't have to monkey with stuff on the front end. So, it's a famous quote, but Gabe Newell once said, piracy is a service issue. And if the service you're providing is to provide people with old games, the least you can do is make them run better than just pirating it. I know I'm stuck on this one thing, but come on, you're putting a ROM in an emulator. That's effectively what this is. Why do I have to put in the extra legwork to make it work on a fundamental level? It doesn't seem like it would be that much effort for the people who put this out to do it that way, and they just didn't. And I can't understand why, especially when that would make this so easy to get a hold of it, especially when you're charging $20 for what this is. It would be so easy to get a hold of this, albeit for kind of a high price for what it is, but at the very least, if it was playable out of the box with any extra monkeying, I think a lot of people could enjoy this. But as it stands, the game itself is good, but people might just return it thinking, hey, this is entirely non-functional, and that's not really the case, but that's how this entire setup feels. And that's the depressing thing. A service is being rendered here that people would actually want. And they might get the entirely wrong idea just because of a few very basic tweaks that could be applied to make the situation substantially better. And it's frustrating to see that, because the game itself is actually pretty fun, but it's not anywhere near worth the retail price of $300. It's a very short game, and it's not that remarkable. So having a readily available version on Steam, yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I fully applaud that that's happening. But why is this the state it's in?